everyone, Melody here, mom of 4 in our blended family of 6, homeschooler for 7 years going on 8 years. Today's video is to answer the question that I get asked the most often. What curriculum do you use to teach your child to read? Okay, so let's just pull the band-aid off of this one right away. I never used a curriculum with my children to teach them to read. Never. It was never part of my plan, and I don't recommend one. So how did I get them to be such vivacious readers? Just to give you an example of the types of readers that I have in my house. The bookworm, who is our biggest reader, goes through a stack of books about this size. She said 20 books here, but she reads about 20 to 21 books every 2 weeks. She's 11 years old, and I'm not really into testing, but just to give you an example of where she ranks compared to her peers, she tested at the 11th grade reading level last year when she was 10 years old. We haven't done this year's testing yet, so I'm a little curious to see how that compares. But it gives us something measurable to assess that by. She started reading, she started decoding words at the age of 3. She started reading books. By the time she was 5, she was reading books like this, about this size. This one is a Magic Tree House books. These were some of our favorites when my kids were little. So while her peers were some of them learning their ABCs, she could read this book independently. By the time she was, 8, 9 years old, and this was one of her favorite books. It was one of my favorite books, and she was running out of reading material in the house, so I offered her this one. This is The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. Now, I don't think that her reading level is because of anything special that we did. I think she's just one of those people that really likes books, and reading is her strength, so I'll use her as the example. My other daughter, Bean Bean, she started decoding words probably around the age of 4, and she was about 7 when she started reading books this size. So the reason I tell you those two comparisons is to point out before I start, every child is different. I don't really feel like there is an age that they should be reading. Some people gave me a lot of grief when they found out that the bookworm was such an early reader because they thought I was pressuring her to read too early, because there is some materials out there that suggest you shouldn't teach your child to read until they're older. But the key to this is I never pressured her to read. Teaching her to read at such an early age was based on her demonstrating to me that she was interested. And so we took steps based on her interest. Stick with me and I will share with you some of those tips and tricks that we used to teach my kids to read without any curriculum. There were no worksheets, there were no flashcards, and they still absolutely love reading, which is the most important thing in my opinion. Or how did I teach my children to read at a very early age with no pressure? The first step, we read a lot of books. Reading was just a part of every day in our house, and we made it fun. It was an enjoyable experience where we would sit down together, we would read books. We would go to story time at the library, and books were often gifts. Even from an early age when they were very little, we didn't put toys in their crib. We didn't put stuffed animals in their crib or pillows and all the things you're not supposed to put in their crib, but they always had books. Baby books, of course, the little soft books or the board books or anything like that. There was a lot of exposure to books themselves physically for them to play with and explore, and there was a lot of exposure to them being read too. If you have a very young child and you're asking yourself, what is the most important thing that I can do to help them learn to read? My answer is read to them. make reading a bonding experience and help them enjoy that activity with you. Okay, so step number 2. In order for your child to be able to read, first they have to be able to decode the words. In order for them to be able to decode the words, they need to understand the letters. I always felt that if my child can look at a cow in the field and tell me that the cow goes moo, then they can look at a letter on a book and tell me that the letter D says D. I know that might seem silly, but we always talked about, what do letters say? We didn't just talk about this is the name of the letter C or D. We talked about the sounds that they made. That was more important than the names of the letters. Then we turned it into hands-on activities. There's a lot of hands-on activities that you can do with your kids to make decoding and understanding letters a lot of fun. There were also the leapfrog videos we really liked, the Talking Word Factory, the Talking Letter Factory. We watched those and we would sing the songs, the A says ah, those kind of things. And then we would do activities like when we talked about the letter E, I would take a piece of paper and I would draw a big bubble letter E on the paper, and then we would decorate it with crumbled up eggshells. Eggshells, egg starts with E, it makes the eh sound. And I would cut out that E after they decorated it, and then we would put it all over the house. And I would ask the kids every once in a while, just randomly throughout the day, hey, can anyone find the letter that says eh? Where is that letter that says eh? And we would do lowercase and uppercase. Really, it's more important for them to learn the lowercase letters than the uppercase letters because those are the letters they see most often. We would pick a letter. We started with the letters of their names because those are the letters that meant the most to them. And let's say we were learning the letter D, for example. We would decorate it with dots. I give them those little bingo dotters and they would just dot, 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 dot. We'd hide it around the house and we would do letter hunts where they would have to find the letter that says D, lowercase and uppercase. And then anytime we were reading a book, I'd be reading the book and having fun and we'd look at the front and I'd be like, do you see the letter D, the letter D in here anywhere? And they would find it and we would clap and have fun. This is when they were 2-3 years old. So it wasn't an assignment. It wasn't a worksheet. They had fun with it. They liked doing the crafts. They liked using the little dotters on the piece of paper, and they liked going on letter hunts, and they liked it when they had the chance to find the letters in the books we were reading. And we would just spend a week or two on each letter. And as we added the letters, I would put them in the house randomly, not in alphabetical order. Again, they learned the letters of their name before any other letters, and lowercase first because those are the letters that they see most often, and the letters in their name are the letters that mean the most to them. So if they can figure out the sounds the letters make, that is your first step in decoding. Step 3, after you've been making it fun and they've been learning how to identify the sounds that the different letters make, for us was forget about the curriculum. This is the time when people are starting to say, okay, let's get them some worksheets or flashcards that they can practice on. And I was like, no, thank you. My kid is 3 years old. They don't want to sit down and do a worksheet. So we would bring step 1 and step 2 together and read books, find those letters. There's some great books that go with the Leapfrog series. There's some great books called the Bob books. And we would start taking those early reader books and having them take the sounds that they've learned and teaching them how to moosh those sounds together to make words. This first step, a lot of people are like, oh, my kid was reading at 3. And I could say that the bookworm was reading at 3, but really she wasn't reading yet. She was just decoding words. It took her some time. She would go through step by step. And when she was ready to be done, we were done. There was no, you're going to sit here and do this until you can get it done. And we would celebrate when she was able to decode a word. We would brag about it to grandma or grandpa so that she felt excited about her accomplishments. Now, again, when people would hear that, oh, my 3-year-old is decoding words and learning to read, I did get a lot of grief. At the time, my social circle was a group of people that did the Waldorf method, in which they were like, no, 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 don't expose them to reading until they're 8. It's bad, bad, bad. And I understand their reasoning behind that. I simply didn't agree for my child at that time because she loved doing it. I wasn't going to tell her, no, you can't read because you're not old enough. If she was interested in it, we were going to grab onto that and hold onto that and just go with the flow. Because in my mind, reading is the key to learning everything. If your child can read, they can do anything. The book is the key to the world. Being able to absorb information on their own without having to rely on somebody else to translate that for them, it's huge, it's empowering, and it's amazing. Now, if they're not ready for that, there is no reason in the world why a child should be pressured at the age of 3, 4, 5, or even 6 or 7 to be reading. If as soon as you start pressuring your kids to do that, you are sucking the joy out of it. And when the joy is gone, you might be able to teach them to decode those words, and you will eventually be able to teach them to read, but they're probably never going to be big readers. And if they're not big readers, they're not getting that information and that joy that books can bring them. So if they're not ready, I agree, it is better to wait. But if your child is ready, then go for it. If you are feeling like, oh, I need to push them a little bit, then just push them in fun ways. Forget the worksheets, forget the curriculum, forget the expensive phonics programs that you can buy for your child. Just bring the joy into it, and then they will read when they're ready. As I often do, I kind of skipped ahead already, but number 4 in how to teach your child to read is to understand that every child learns at their own pace. Every child learns at a different time period, and if you pay attention to where your child's at and what their interests are, and you let them lead while facilitating, they're going to learn so much more than if you try and force it on them. Now, this does not mean sit around and wait for your kid to come to you and say, Mom, I want to learn to read, because they're probably not going to say that to you at the same time when they're actually ready to learn that skill. So you do need to take steps to promote reading, but that's not the same thing as pressuring them to, you need to figure this out right now. So step 4, remember every child is different and they learn in their own way. So let them be the guide and follow their lead on what they're ready for and when they're ready for it. Okay, last one. Step 5, teach with intention. I know this sounds like it's contradictory to let your child lead and then I say teach with intention, but it's really not. They do go hand in hand. Knowing when your child's ready and knowing what interests your child has and knowing their learning style, all of those things are really important in helping your child to lead their progress. But setting aside time in your own mind, in your own routine, to sit down and read with them, to talk about the sounds of letters, that takes intention. We don't walk around Walmart and talk to strangers and say, hey, look, there's broccoli. Broccoli starts with a B sound. What letter do you think that is? We don't talk like that. It takes intention to incorporate those little steps into your day. So if you can take those steps and you can teach with intention and know where your child's at and what they're ready for, you can, if you can totally forget about the curriculum, make it fun and read in your own life with your child and independently in front of your child. Those 5 steps your child will be reading when they're ready, and hopefully they will be reading with joy. They won't be reading because they have to, or because somebody forced them to, or because it's a chore. They'll be reading because they will have discovered how amazing it is to be able to decode those words and know what's in that book and have those stories to themselves. You will have unlocked a whole world of adventure and information for them for now and into their future. Okay, a few of my favorite resources that I mentioned in this video were Mommy Teach Me to Read, the Leapfrog videos, Leapfrog books. Bob books were great. And one that I don't think I mentioned very much, but just the library. When you incorporate your library, then your price tag is my favorite number, FREE, free, which I always love. I don't know about you, but I don't need to have an extra expense in my day. You don't need to buy an expensive curriculum. Get a few of these resources. You need a piece of paper, maybe some paint, some dot markers, some eggshells. There's so many things you can do that are free that can help your child learn to love reading. Okay, I hope this video was helpful for you. If you're new to our channel, please take a minute to like and subscribe. Check me out on Instagram. I just started Instagram page for the first time. I'm still decoding it myself because I'm new to this, and technology and I have not always been the best of friends. But I hope that you're enjoying this channel. I hope the information has been helpful for you. Please put a comment in the comment box if you have one, and I will catch you next time. A quick note about testing. The only reason we do testing in the first place is because we live in Washington State, and that is a requirement for homeschool students over the age of 8 to test every year just to track them and make sure they're making progress. They don't have to score anything in particular, and you don't even turn the tests into anyone, but that is why we even bother with the testing in the first place, is because we have to.